Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Alpha 3.15 took its initial plunge into the PTU last night for the Evocati. Let us take a look at the patch notes. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. And if you do enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So the first 3.15 build dropped for the Evocatis last night, which was only up for a few hours. I think it was around 3 hours, as there was a lot of 30Ks, which is the usual occurrence with any early Evocati build, which was likely more of a stress test just for gathering data, and the chances are we won't see another Evo patch until next week while they react to the data they collected, but it is great to see that they have finally begun rolling it out, and of course I will cover all the patches between now and Wave 1 on my YouTube channel. Now there is a lot to get through as a lot of these features are quite deep. Firstly, long-term persistence is disabled. As mentioned, we know there is a wipe coming and they have fully wiped all the accounts. As usual for any early Evocati build, it does not contain all of the build features and they will be implemented iteratively as they become available. Now the testing focus for this initial 3.15 build is the personal inventory, healing and actor status, hospitals, the Hercules A2 Starlifter, bombs, and Orison version 2. So for the hospitals, it also includes the emergency elevator inside the landing zone hangars that will transport players directly to the hospital. Great for anyone wanting to roleplay as a medic using the Cutlass Red, or really any ship for that matter. Being able to drop injured or downed players in the hangar's emergency elevator will be great fun, and that character that you did drop off will just reawake in the hospital bed. For AI, they have included unmanned missile defense turrets, which will be found at underground facilities and space stations, so a nice new security addition for both those locations, making these underground facilities and their new missions, whatever they may be, much more of a challenge. So for gameplay, we have the personal inventory tier 0 and the asset manager version 1, which does say that this utilizes iCache and persistence wherever the player travels, and pressing I will open up your inventory. It also says the current landing zones share inventories with their low orbit stations above planets. Now I'm expecting this will be a temporary thing just for quality of life, so that you can access your inventory from a station without having to fly down planetside, most likely to help with the issue of not having all the hospitals ready, but this will eventually change, I expect, when inventory becomes physicalized. Basically, when clicking over any item in the inventory, you will get a contextual menu with available interactions like splitting stacked items, which is useful. All armor and clothing items can now be carried, dropped, placed, and left in the world. Currently, these are represented in carryable boxes, as we have seen on Inside Star Citizen, until of course it is physicalized, and while in this state, they can be interacted with and equipped. The character inventory is no longer restricted to just commodities. You can now hold FPS armor, weapons, clothing, consumables, and one-handed carryables, provided that they fit. So it does sound like two-handed weapons will not likely fit inside your inventory. They can of course be attached directly to armor externally, and maybe they can be held in larger backpacks, we just don't know right now. Now when in the inventory UI, the player is disabled but shown in the center of the UI with a controllable camera and the ability to drag and drop items on and off the character from the inventory containers or even onto the floor. Now I do like the fact that we have full control of the camera, so we can see our character and the things that you're attaching to them all around them. Although eventually I would like it to be so you don't see your character in third person, as it does kind of give an advantage while you're looting or in your inventory, being able to see someone sneak up behind you, which I don't think is a good thing, and hopefully they will change that later on. Now for weapon attachments, these can be dragged directly onto the weaponry that is held or equipped, which is pretty awesome, and if the player is downed or killed, other players will of course be able to loot them. Now when a player does die, their body will become lootable for all of the items that they have on them at the location of their death for 2 hours before despawning. Now this will be irrespective of your down state time. So for example, if you are in a down state for 30 minutes and then after you've respawned back at a hospital, your body will be there for 2 hours. I assume your body will be there for 2 hours, allowing time for you or anyone else to go and loot your stuff back. And I do wonder if bodies will persist indefinitely long term, or maybe at least for a much longer period of time when global persistence is in, rather than just a 2 hour basis. This could just be the starting point, just so that they can still clean up the servers. But it's good to know that you will have 2 hours once you die, once you respawn. And you will also know that if you see anyone lying around that you want to loot, you will then know that they have died within 2 hours and will likely be on their way back to get their inventory. Now for ship's inventory, all ships with interior space will have accessible inventory while inside the said ship, and any player can access their own instance vehicle inventory when inside. So it does sound like multiple people could store their own inventory inside any ship, even if it's not owned. I don't know if that is the case. It does sound that way, but it could be more applicable to ownership, and only they can access their own inventory. So you can access other people's inventory, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays. If we can access our own in any one ship, I don't know. Also, if a ship is destroyed, then a large cargo box will appear that will allow any player to loot the items via the interaction menu. And these will be the items that were left inside that ship before it blew up. So we will be able to regain our items if our ship explodes. But again, on the flip side, pirates will be able to loot those items from others, so be on your guard. Now, for the incapacitated state, when a player takes enough damage, they will become incapacitated, where they ragdoll and then become unable to move or interact, and their vision will fade in and out. A time until death will be displayed, and once that timer runs out, they will just die and then respawn or regenerate at the medical facility of their choosing. Now, the duration of this timer can be shortened by receiving additional damage and by bleeding, dehydration, extreme temperatures, anything actor status related. Instant death can be caused by receiving a large amount of damage in one instance, and when you are in an incapacitated state, a button prompt is displayed to trigger a service beacon, which, if taken by another player, creates a mission to revive you. And when close to the incapacitated player, you can use a medical pen, likely the red one. I think only the red one, as the other ones are for different symptoms. We will talk about them in a second. You can use the medical gun or the multi-tool as well, and this will bring that downed player back to life, but with 50% health. Now, nothing is mentioned in regards to a criminal accepting the revive mission, which I know is a concern for everybody. So either anyone can accept regardless of crime stat, but I am hoping that if someone has a crime stat, then maybe they won't see that beacon, which I think makes sense, as crime stats already affect what missions you can and cannot see, but we don't know that for certain. So in terms of death and regeneration, as we know, if you die, you will regenerate at the designated hospital closest to your chosen primary residence. You can go to another hospital or clinic or ship with a tier 2 or tier 1 bed and set that as your new regeneration location via the UI on the medical bed or dedicated regeneration screen. And if that particular location is no longer available, for example, if your ship explodes, then you will respawn at the original home location. Also, if a player's set regeneration location isn't available due to maybe all the beds being full, you will be given the option to regenerate at the home location to avoid waiting in the queue, or you can just wait and respawn later on. So I guess if there is a lot of you in the same location and dying often, then it won't just be an instant everybody spawns back in, it will be staggered based on the available beds in that location. Now I really like this aspect, as it's another incentive to stay alive, knowing that the regeneration process could take a while if there's a lot of you all fighting around in the same place. I think that's a nice touch. So in terms of injuries, what we heard on Inside Star Citizen will now be applicable for our characters, as well as the blood drug level, or BDL, which includes medical drugs and alcohol as well. Your BDL can get to 200%, and if your BDL does not reach less than 100% before your health ticks to 0, you will then die. Now, as we know, the medical drugs can temporarily mask any symptoms, regenerate health, and the stunned effects of overdose state temporarily removed, at a cost of raising your BDL per dose, which can be delivered via the med pens, guns, or the multi-tool. Now, drugs do remain in the player's system for a specified duration, and the delivery method of those drugs have varied efficacy, which will affect duration. The types of drugs now available are Hemazal, which is the med pen. This heals HP, stops bleeding, and revives players. Roxafen, which is an OPO pen. This masks hurt locomotion, prone lock, arm lock, and pain grunt sound effects. So if you are literally unable to walk, unable to use your arms, or you're making a groaning sound, this will mask that issue. Demexatrine, which is an Adrena pen. This masks reduced stun recovery, reduced impact resistance like force reaction sensitivity, reduced movement speed, increased weapon sway, and decreased aim down sight enter times. So this looks like some of the symptoms we can get from maybe a head impact. Stereogen, which is a Corico pen. This masks the blood vision, muffled audio effects, reduced stamina regeneration, reduced max stamina, wheezing audio effects, and reduced melee force. And then Resurgera, which is a detox pen. This revives an overdosed character, provided they are not also in an incapacitated state, but it does not exit the overdose state. This damage is still applied to the overdosed character, and while Resurgera is present in the character, all of the drug's decay rates are doubled, resulting in their duration being reduced. So basically the BDL decay rate is doubled, resulting in the overdosed state being exited more quickly. So Resurgera is literally just a pen to tackle overdosing and BDL levels. Now these 4 new medical pens have been added to shops around the verse, and it'll be fun learning more about them. So when it comes to using the medical gun or multi-tool healing attachment, you will be using a healing beam, and players can administer drugs within 5 meters of the target. To diagnose a player, both the medical gun and the multi-tool display health and active status information about the character that they point them at. The back display of both guns show how much medical ammo is available, and either the current target's health or the reason why they can't be fired upon, like maybe they're too far away or their BDL is too high. For these devices, there are 2 augmented reality UI cards displayed either side of the target, with the left-hand side card displaying global health information, including health, states like bleeding, time until death, any administered drugs, and their time remaining, which will be great for triaging a situation. And if you point the gun at any of the body parts, it'll display a transparent color-coded overlay indicating which tier of injury, if any, the player has. Now for self-healing, both the devices have a secondary mode which allows you to self-diagnose and treat. And the basic mode of each gun is limited to delivering the Hemazal, which is the basic healing drug. You can specify the dosage amount with the medical gun's advanced mode, with the predicted duration of the drugs and the resulting blood drug level, which the multi-tool attachment cannot do, so only the dedicated tool will give you that information. Really love this. This is the first actual dedicated tool for any profession. The multi-tool is a multi-tool, as it says. It isn't a dedicated tool, so this medical tool is a must-have for any medical professional, but to be fair, I think any citizen would probably want to carry one as well. Now, in regards to medical beds in hospitals, clinics, and in ships, alongside what we already know about healing oneself, each bed has a status screen which is either freestanding or wall-mounted, and displays the status of anyone in that bed, which is going to be so much fun on all levels if you are a medic. So from a Cutlass Red to an A90 Jump, an Apollo, and eventually the Endeavour, being able to go from bed to bed and monitor the patient to ensure that they are getting the treatment that they need to get back on their feet. And I can just imagine if you have picked up a downed player with a tier 2 or tier 1 injury and you have them in the bed of a Cutlass Red, you cannot heal them or fix that issue, but you can still monitor them and administer what you need while en route to a hospital to keep them alive and to make sure that their symptoms don't get any worse until they can get into the hospital bed. Really cool. Now, players that enter the down state in a landing zone were rescued or admitted via the emergency elevators will all wake up in a hospital bed, and then upon waking up, you will be presented with the information as to how you got there. For example, the reason for admission or the cause of death. With hospitals, players can reserve a room via the check-in screen, so you can walk into the lobby of a hospital, go to a check-in screen and then reserve a room, which will allow you access to use the bed if you have an injury and you want to get it fixed up. You can also change your respawn location there, purchase medical items from the pharmacy, or use the elevator to just get to your room. NPC doctors will welcome you to the room or welcome you when you awake, and as mentioned before, the emergency elevators allow for a downed, injured, or overdosed player to be dragged into, and once in the elevator, the doors can then be closed and the player who was in there will be awoken in the hospital. So great for these revive missions or anyone who just rescues a player, be that a friend or a random. Really loving how this medical stuff sounds. And of course, we will delve into it a lot deeper, and I will do some tutorials and deep looks into how it works once we get our hands on it officially. So, moving on to bombs, these are also in 3.15, and these allow the A2 Hercules to switch to bombs just like switching to missile mode, and while active, it'll give the player a selection marker by pressing the right Alt and T button to to allow them to define an area to drop a bomb. As the bombs drop with gravity and are not controlled after release, there is a new UI alignment and drop HUD after selecting the target location on the ground. All other missile operator mode behaviors will also apply here, such as increasing the number of bombs per drop, waiting for them to arm, and so on. And initially, the A2 will only have bombs and no missiles. So for new locations, we have Orison version 2 and the additional shops like the Crusader Showroom, Cousin Crow's Custom Crafts Ship Parts Shop, and Providence Surplus for industrial clothing and gear. So it's nice to get some idea of what this sells. It is industrial clothing and gear, which personally I think is pretty cool. Port Olisar as well, as we heard, is now relocated closer to Orison, so keep that in mind when you are going back and forth. And finally, for weapons and items, we have backpacks, which are now separate items and can be detached from armor and equipped or unequipped. So anyway, moving on to bug fixing, they have fixed an issue causing some players to repeatedly encounter 30,009 errors when attempting to join the PU. They have fixed an issue causing AUEC and unequipped items to randomly disappear from players' inventories. That is a great fix. There should no longer be a colour difference between the player's head and bodies. They've fixed an issue causing players to take damage when entering a ship. Asteroid FPS deposits should now be able to be scanned, and FPS AI should no longer continue to shoot through other enemy AI while attacking a player, and there is a couple of other bug fixes. They've also fixed 5 client crashes, 3 server crashes, they've fixed a back-end service timeout, and they have done server performance optimizations. Now, there are some other points found within the patch, but these are all leaked and data mined information. It's not officially announced, so they could be coming in with 3.15, they could be coming later, they could be taken out, we just don't know yet. But there appears to be setups for new courier missions and reputations. There are new mission types like eliminating a boss and defending an underground facility and transporting NPCs. There is evidence of true custom paint, so being able to choose a primary and secondary colour in a very simple manner, but it is certainly better than what we have at the moment. So there is a lot going on, and as always, I will try to cover as much as I can. All this information that I have spoken about can be found on the Star Citizen Leaks Discord channel, which I will link in the description below should you want to learn more. But that is the initial Evocati patch, quite a big initial release with a lot of stuff for the Evos to get their teeth into. Great to get a little more insight into a lot of stuff, especially the medical changes and so forth. Unfortunately, as I say, it was only up for a short duration due to things like 30Ks and more likely, as I say, just gathering data rather than being a permanent patch for the Evos to test. Hopefully there is another patch this weekend, but chances are it will be next week. But with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. We have a lot to get through on my YouTube channel and on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/supermacbrothers. That is also linked in the description below. We have the CitizenCon schedule and a lot more stuff going on as well, so there is a lot of content to get through and to discuss over on Twitch. Hit that thumbs up if you don't mind, it does do the channel a big favour, and if you want to be notified when my videos go live, just tick that little notification bell. Again, cannot do this without my patrons and channel members, so thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.